I love this Tyrese interview of Club Shay Shay because it's so much stuff in here. But he said that Tyrese says Snoop Dogg's globally a bigger rapper than Jay-Z. I agree. Jay-Z might have more songs, but I think when it comes to like energy and people feel like they feel like I'm just cool with this person, is Snoop Dogg. Snoop Dogg is one of those people. Now Snoop got security, right? It's not like you can just walk up and touch him. But I think the thing about the Olympics is proven is that Snoop Dogg is just a man of the people. Like Jay-Z is just off in his mansion or wherever he is in New York. And you don't even hardly see Jay. You see him from spots, but he doesn't seem accessible. And Snoop seems very accessible. I think globally he is. If I said, well, from a marketing standpoint, would you rather have to market your product, Jay-Z or Snoop? I'm taking Snoop. I'm taking Snoop every day because it just seems like he's just more relatable to people. But I started thinking, right? And I said, man, who are the 5 most important people in Snoop's life? Now, again, you got his wife, you got his kids. When he was younger, there was Uncle Junebug. I remember because Uncle Junebug like an old Snoop. And it's like, oh my God, it's an old Snoop. But that was like 30 years ago. But I was like, to start thinking, it's like, who's the most influential people in Snoop's life? So start from the beginning. Number 1, I think, is Warren G. Warren G, if it wasn't for Warren G being Dr. Dre's brother, I think half brother, Dre would have never heard of Snoop because at the time you had 213. It was Warren G, Snoop, and Nate Dogg. And I think that's the tape that he gave Dre. And he asked him, who's that dude rapping? And it was Snoop. Now, this is Dre after NWA, because he worked with Ice Cube and Ren. He had the DOC. I mean, at that point, because I don't know if the DOC got into his accident yet. You had the DOC. And Snoop was from Long Beach. Like, nobody's talking about Long Beach. They talk about Compton. They talk about Oakland. They weren't talking about Long Beach at all. So Dre heard that voice and said, wow, like I need to work with that guy. And none of this would have happened if he wasn't best friends with Warren G. And I still think that Warren G did a lot of work on that Doggy Style album. I think people have talked about that off and on over the years. But yeah, Warren G is very important. Number 2 is already talked about Dr. Dre. Dr. Dre put Snoop on deep cover. The Larry Fishburne, Jeff Goldblum movie, hood classic. He could have picked anybody, but he picked Snoop. Then we go from there to The Chronic. We go from there to Doggy Style. Then The Murder is the Case EP, and then nothing. Like it's hard to believe like Snoop and Dre has this new album coming up in 2024, maybe 2025. I think 2024. But it's like, man, why did it take over 30 years to make a sequel to Doggy Style? It never made any sense. But yeah, but in between that, you also have The Chronic 2001. But yeah, Dre and Snoop, man, that combination is just unbeatable. So shout out to Dr. Dre. Number 3, David Kenner. He's the lawyer who got Snoop off that murder trial. If Snoop had a bad lawyer or a guy who just wanted to plead the case, Snoop could still be in jail today. David Kenner saved Snoop's life because at that point, Snoop had deep cover. He had The Chronic. He had Doggy Style. And now you got this murder case that could have ended everything. The Snoop Dogg we see today at the Olympics might not have never existed if David Kenner didn't get Snoop off get him off that murder case, man. So David Kenner is so important into the Snoop Dogg we see today because after that, Snoop Dogg totally changed his life around, became a lot more positive, given the people that he hung out with, everything. Like that's when all that stuff was happening to Death Row and East, West, and all that stuff, Snoop stayed out of that stuff. He stayed out of that beefing games for the most part. So David Kenner's number 3. Number 4 is Master P. Master P taught Snoop about business. Death Row imploded. I doubt that Suge Knight taught Snoop anything about business. And plus, at that point, Snoop was just still an artist. And Dre was a producer. So Dre's business mind didn't kick in until he got with Jimmy Iovine a few years later. And then they got Beats. But yes, after Death Row imploded, Master P got Snoop out of his contract with Suge, brought him down to New Orleans, gave him a house, and just taught Snoop Dogg about business, about branding, about marketing. All this marketing stuff we see, all these commercials we see, it all stems from Master P. I think if you take Master P out of this equation, Snoop is just an artist who might be on these 90s tours, 90s music festivals, which is nothing wrong with that. Like Young MC was on Drink Champs and said, he enjoys these 90s tours because he makes pretty good money doing it, right? But that's what Snoop's future would have been if Master P didn't come to his life and tell him about business. And the thing about the house, like we hear these horror stories about people, yeah, he gave him a house and a Cadillac and then took all his money. It's like, no. It's like Master P was on the up and up with Snoop the whole time. And even now, I'm sure Snoop goes to Master P about business ideas or just advice. Like whoever Snoop's team is today, marketing, business-wise, they're great. But I do think from time to time, he does go back to Master P. Because Master P, and that's just on the music side, but remember, he was doing No Limit films too. And for a little while, Snoop was also doing films. Like that, Snoop got his business degree at No Limit University from Master P. And there was a great documentary on BET. I wish they were still doing this. It's like Behind the Label or something like that, where they talk about different labels like Rough Riders and No Limit. But the No Limit thing is fantastic. Like No Limit had their problems. It wasn't like it's not like everything was peaches and cream with No Limit. But the relationship between Master P and Snoop Dogg was so important. Number 5 could have been the Neptunes. It could have been Chad and Pharrell, because you would have thought that the only main producers that could have produced Snoop was probably Warren G and Dre. But then the Neptunes popped up and they made classic hits. I almost wish they made more music together, but it really didn't happen. But they struck gold with like Drop It Like It's Hot, Beautiful, and those tracks are just great. But they're not number 5. Number 5 is Martha Stewart. The Unlikely Friendship of Martha Stewart. When they first got together as friends, it felt like an old Mad TV sketch back in the 90s. I can see somebody playing Snoop Dogg and somebody playing Martha Stewart, and it became friends smoking weed in the 90s on Mad TV. Because it seemed very implausible, but they met on a Comedy Central celebrity roast, and they really liked each other. Like Martha, I can see Snoop liking Martha, but Martha really liked Snoop, and they've been friends ever since. And he said that she taught him how to be a better chef. But I think it's more than that. Where Master P gave him his business degree in business, I think Snoop got his master's from Martha Stewart. Because Martha Stewart, she's around billionaires. She's around people who got a whole heck of a lot. Master P is around people who got money, but Martha Stewart, that's a whole different tax bracket of people. And, I'm sure that Snoop sometimes, I think that's an association that Snoop has with Martha Stewart opened a different doors for him. I don't think the Olympics would have happened if he wasn't friends with Martha Stewart. I think people liked Snoop, but they probably said, well, he kind of appeals to urban markets and all that stuff. Those people probably would have never put him on if he was just Snoop Dogg, who was, working with Charlie Wilson, working with Master P, working with Dr. Dre. But because he was associated with Martha Stewart, some of these main people said, oh, well, if Martha likes him, it's almost like she got a cosign. Well, there must be more to this guy. He's still the same guy, but in the eyes of some of these executives, he's different now because he's with Martha. So that probably opened the door for more different branding deals that he has now. More, the Olympics that just first it was like him and Kevin Hart, and then he just became an Olympic correspondent, and he was great at it because he actually studied and actually enjoyed what he was doing. So no, I think his association with Martha Stewart, where he probably goes to Master P a lot more about business, his association with Martha Stewart just opened up things globally for this dude, even as big as he is. So yeah, so that's the 5 people I think had an impact on Snoop's life. Now, if there's other people that I missed, let me know. What's your top 5? I think I'm pretty close with this, but if you have a different 5, let me know. So what do you think about what Tyrese said about Snoop? Is he bigger than Jay-Z globally? Is there any other rapper do you think that might be actually more popular than Snoop around the globe? I don't know. Is it? I'm not sure. But right now, as we're talking right now, I agree with Tyrese. Snoop Dogg is the biggest rapper globally in the world. But it could be somebody else. If you have an idea, let me know below.